until right now.
Until right now. Can you hear me?
We're just having some issues getting the conference room audio hooked up. You got any suggestions for Corey?
Mute all your. Oh, is that Corey in there?
David, this is Zane. When you were talking just a minute ago, I was getting a lot of reverberation and background echo.
Mr. Nealon was having some problems getting into Zoom. He is going to be calling in, and I will switch him to a panelist once he calls in. So please be patient, and we should begin shortly. Mr. Nealon, you should be able to talk now. If you could say hello.
Yeah, Mark, can you hear us?
Mr. Nealon, if you could unmute your phone. Yes, I can hear
Mark,
you.
can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, I've unmuted about 3 times now, and I don't know why it hasn't let me in. So, but I'm apparently in now. Sorry for the confusion.
No problem, and you're on Prime Gov, so thank you. Lisa,
Mark, can you hear now?
yes, I can.
Okay, the overhead's not working, so we're gonna use his laptop for the sound.
Oh, okay.
What is this? What is this? Get back to it. Get out of it. I'm trying. How do you get out of it? Go back to, just go back to home. Is that good? Yes, we need six, and that we should need six. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and that's it. That's right. So, okay, I think you can go ahead and read your script.
Well, good morning, and thank you for joining us for the MAF3 Citizens Advisory Board video conference meeting. We do have a few announcements to make regarding the meeting today. First, if the video conference is disconnected at any time during the meeting shall be stopped and reconvened once the audio-video connection is restored. If communications are unable to be restored within 15 minutes, items remaining for consideration will be continued at 11:30 a.m. on February 25th, 2021 via video conference. Secondly, the agenda and documents are located on okc.gov. Third, to speak on a certain agenda item, please call in advance of the meeting to 405-297-3467 or text your request in advance of the meeting to 405-205-4195. Include your name, the agenda item number, and the reason you would like to speak. Please submit your request prior to the beginning of the meeting to avoid receiving your request after your item has been considered. City staff will attempt to submit requests received during the meeting to process them to the meeting chair. Finally, to speak under the agenda item comments by board staff and citizens, please call or text 405-205-4195. Please list your name, address, phone number, and the subject on which you wish to address the board. Now, do we have a quorum for the meeting? I'm advised that we have a quorum, so therefore the meeting is hereby called to order. The item number 2 on our agenda is a consideration of the minutes of our January 28th, 21 advisory board meeting. You've been furnished with copies. Are there additions or corrections to the minutes? Shall we approve them? Cecilia has moved that we approve them, seconded by D. Further discussion? All in, cast your ballot. I have to what?
Bob's calling in, so he'll need a voice vote.
Oh, Bob, I guess we need your voice vote. Bob Nayland.
Well, I'm on Prime Gov and I've tapped yay, but I don't know.
All right.
It's not going for what.
Okay. Okay.
I'm not seeing yet whether or not it's been approved. I'm assuming it has. Shall we move on? All right. We did not record any nay votes, so we have approved the minutes. That brings us to item number 3 on the agenda. First one is item A. David?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is for the period of ending in March 31st, 2021. revenue and expenditure report. So on the revenue side for the month, there's $110,083. Fiscal year of $929,526 and total of $835,821,469. On the expenditure side, we have for the month $6,939,247. Fiscal year $45,896,546 and total of $724,877,789. You also have the budget and obligations report in your packet, and if you have any questions, I'll try to answer those.
Questions for David? All right, shall we receive it? Michael has moved that we receive it, seconded by Cecilia. Cast your vote.
Mr. Harding, how do you vote?
Mr. Harding, I don't believe is here. Mr. Nealon.
Yeah, on Prime Gov, I've tapped the A button and it's green. Is it not coming through?
There, we finally got it.
Okay.
Okay, the report has been received. David, that takes us to item B, the presentation.
Yes, sir. As you recall, we're doing some significant work on Robinson Avenue from the boulevard down to the bridge. It's right between the park and the convention center. And I wanted to give you an update on that construction. So Craig Wallace from Smith Roberts Ballesweiler is here to give you a brief presentation on the progress of that project. So I'd like to turn it over to Craig.
All right. Thank you, Director Todd and Chairman and board members. We really appreciate the opportunity to present this update on Robinson Street, South and Southwest 7th Street construction there along the convention center. We're excited about the progress and would like to update you on that. So as we go to the next slide, what I hope to do is to progress on the job as we see completed portions of it, as well as portions that are still under construction. And I will give you the perspective, and also on the screen, you will see a directional map that hopefully gives you a good perspective of that. As we look southbound along Robinson from Oklahoma City Boulevard, you will notice that this section of roadway is completed and open to traffic. The picture actually reflects a yellow light, so we know the traffic lights are operational here and allows traffic to travel along the west side of the convention center from Oklahoma City Boulevard and going south. I will obviously recognize that the striping is complete. You see the bike lanes that are along Robinson Street, Scissortail Park there on the right or the west side of the roadway. The Omni Hotel is open, and I know Convention Center is taking people through different tours and things that are happening, and so people are able to access along Robinson Street here from the boulevard. The next slide will actually show a pedestrian signal that is installed to connect Scissortail Park to the convention center. Again, you can see the completed pavement. I'm not sure if today that pedestrian signal is operational, just basically because of the cold weather snap that we've had. If it's not, it will be soon, and we'll be able to obviously help and assist pedestrians as they travel between the park and the convention center. The next slide is on the south end at 6th Street, still looking south along Robinson Street. We recognize that the barricades are still in place. There's some construction material right behind the barricades. And so this is, we see the crosswalk that's open and Southwest 6th Street going back east from Robinson is also open along the south side of the convention center to allow ingress, egress, people that are traveling along those roads to be able to get to and from Robinson, 6th Street, as well as the Broadway and even Shields Boulevard. As we go to the next slide, you'll see that this picture is taken behind the barricades. We are looking northbound towards downtown Oklahoma City from just north of the bridge there at I-40. You can see construction of the roundabout. This roadway, as I'm sure everybody is aware, does have a roundabout there at 7th Street. The elevation was raised about 4 to 5 feet in order for us to construct this roundabout at a proper grade. I will notice that there's not a whole lot of work going on. I believe this picture may have been taken the second day of our recent cold front. So I don't know that there's a lot of activities that were going on, but I promise I was there this morning and it's a completely different view. People are really working and trying to move forward with progress on this section of the roadway. The next slide, as we look at that, is a little bit more detailed on the roundabout. This typical section again shows downtown and actually the park in the background. It's a good section that shows protection of the recently poured concrete curb as well as sidewalk. The section that's behind the curb is an underlayment for the pavers that will be installed along the back of curb. The open section is actually a section of a truck lane turnaround, trucks that come through the roundabout that may be too long or not able to make that radius. That section of pavement will support that. It will be a reinforced or a dowel jointed concrete pavement so that we don't experience any damage. So this picture actually is a good section, typical section to look at to understand how that roundabout will work. The next slide that we see will be a perspective from the north from the park area, southeast. The retaining wall protects the roundabout, shows the elevation change. I apologize for the echo. Are you hearing that as well? Okay.
Yes.
I apologize through that. But retaining protects that had to be put in for the roundabout, the elevation roundabout. There will be a railing to be installed with that retaining wall, but it gives us a perspective of how we see it from the park. The next slide is actually construction on Southwest 7th Street. As we look from the roundabout, looking east towards Shields Boulevard Bridge, you can see that there's retaining wall construction that's being worked on the right side of your photo or on the south side of the roadway. We also see that the subgrade, the aggregates have been installed. Again, no work because of the temperature issues related to this time frame, but you can see the work that's going on along Southwest 7th Street. The next picture actually is a reverse perspective as we look from the east to the west. The parking lot on the south side of the convention is on the right side. That's actually the entrance drive off of Southwest 7th, the gated entrance into that parking lot. You see, different equipment, and they're working on. It's good to see the imprints of the sheet foot roller to know compaction's being accomplished on our roadway. But this gives you a perspective of where the construction on Southwest 7th Street is, and the work that still needs to be accomplished on Southwest 7th Street. The last slide actually is us trying to explain what progress we'll see in the next few weeks. I know we're anticipating a mid-March, I believe, completion or very 1st of April. Construction of the roundabout, trucks will continue, the truck aprons that we discussed behind the curb, installation of guard railing that is along the sidewalk off of the bridge, as well as there on that retaining wall. Again, I was there this morning. Concrete has been poured on the sidewalks behind the back of curb. There is a lot of activity on the job today. The grading will be completed on Southwest 7th so that they can start the paving operations. The retaining wall that we saw in one of the 7th Street pictures has been formed up, should be poured today or tomorrow. And then obviously as the roadways are completed, we will complete the amenity areas behind with the pavers that will be installed, and then the striping and the signage will be complete. We had a final inspection, preliminary final inspection on the open section of roadways. Obviously, we'll complete a final inspection on the remaining portion of the roadway and any punch lists that are derived from that towards completion of the project. And I think with that slide, I'll be more than happy to answer any questions that you may have. And we, again, appreciate the opportunity to present this, and we're really excited about the open sections and the accessibility to the convention center, the Omni, and the roadway that's completed. So do we have any questions? All right. Thank you very much, and appreciate, again, working with MAPS and the advisory board.
Tom, I think you're muted. I'm not sure if you're talking or not, but you're muted.
Is that better?
Yes, sir.
All right. All right. That brings us to item C, David.
Item C is recommend approval of final plans and specifications to be advertised for bids. Project M3-H002B, MAPS 3 Senior Health and Wellness Center Number 1, additional improvements, 11501 North Rockwell Avenue, Ward 5. So this is the additional improvements that we've talked about, and you've seen preliminary reports. So Ryan Eshelman from GSB is here today to give you a idea of what's in the plans, and hopefully with approval, we'll get this on the council so we can get this bid. So I'd like to turn it over to Ryan.
Thank you, David. It's a pleasure to be with you all again this morning at this milestone in our project. Excited to see this get underway here in the coming weeks. Update you quickly on where we are in the process and refamiliarize you with the design. Of course, the site that was acquired for Center 1 outlined in red here was a unique shape because it only included the land needed for the original project. And so on the following site plan, you will see shaded in blue the additional land that's been acquired to accommodate this building and parking expansion. We're adding about 100 parking spaces there to the west of the existing parking lot. And of course, we're expanding the building to the west as well. We're also rerouting the fire lane that wraps around the building to accommodate that building expansion. And thankfully, we have to do very little to the existing detention area to accommodate this additional impervious area. So you can see outlined or shaded in gray there, the existing building with the addition to the west. And as I mentioned, the additional parking, which includes accessible parking spaces close to the building, well beyond what's required by the standard city ordinance. On the following slide, you'll see a kind of an aerial diagram that shows the existing building and the new addition to the west with a small addition to the south. And a listing of some of the alternates that I'll highlight momentarily. And on the following slides, you can see another angle of the addition, exactly how it interfaces with the existing building. The next slide shows a rendering with a little more realistic depiction of that addition. On the large mass on the left there includes the existing gym as well. On the right, and then on the left is the new addition with a locker room there wrapped in brick on the south facade as well. As you can imagine, most of this will not be noticeable from Rockwell because we're adding this onto the west side of the building, but will be apparent obviously when you pull into the parking lot or from this vantage point from the south. You can also see the expanded parking lot in this view as well. The overall plan shows in the color shaded areas, the areas of work, which include on the left-hand side, the new construction, which is a 3 additional pickleball courts in a gymnasium type space. In green is a multi-purpose room with an elevated platform stage where they can do a number of activities, and includes an alternate for a partition to subdivide that space. That green space is roughly the same square footage as the large multi-purpose room on the east side of the existing building. So it's a significant space. We can get a lot of people in and do a lot of different activities within. The orange area on the south, some office and support and restroom and dry locker room areas, no showers in that area. And then in pink is some circulation and lounge areas. The red area on the right is the renovations and expansion of the existing locker rooms, which we'll look at in a little more detail. The following slide is an enlargement of the addition. And you can see the pickleball area cut off there in blue, the green multi-purpose room that I mentioned that can be subdivided with the operable partition if that alternate is taken, some support space, and that elevated stage platform, which helps them to do some speaking events and some theater and performance events as well. And then I mentioned the locker room areas, which will include lockers and dry vanities, but no showers. And then some office and support space for volunteers and staff. The next slide shows the locker room renovation and expansion, which includes reworking the showers in the men's and women's areas, adding some trench drains in the circulation areas, adding 2 additional showers for the women, and taking half of the existing meeting room on the right to create additional locker room space, additional private changing areas, additional dry vanities, and bench space. So substantial addition to the square footage available for the women, and of course the demand for aquatic aerobics and other classes and use of the pool has made clear that that's really valuable and important space. Following slide is a furniture plan. This is included as an alternate. Our base bid will not accommodate our estimated base bid cost will not accommodate the furniture, but we'd like to leave that opportunity open if funds become available on bid day or subsequently. So there is some furniture in the multi-purpose room and some lounge furniture in the common areas outside of that space for gathering and relaxing, and some miscellaneous office furniture in the limited office space that's been provided. Following slide shows one additional alternate, which is some ADA automated door openers around the locker room and pool area. And on the next slide, you'll see our project budget in the typical MAPS format with funds for the land acquisition, the construction, all of the other costs associated with design and construction, artwork, and contingency. So that 3.63, you'll see on the following slide with our cost estimate, that's what we have to work with for building and site work. In our base bid estimate, we've worked closely to manage this to get the project just within that budget in the base bid. And then we've included 5 alternates. I mentioned number 1, the furniture. Number 2 is a small gym storage room on the north end of the pickleball space to store equipment for that area. Number 3 is the operable partition in the multi-purpose room that I mentioned. 4, the automatic door openers in and around the locker room and pool. And 5 are some additional acoustical treatments in the pickleball and gym area to assist in reverberation control in that space. So that's a quick snapshot of where we are with our cost estimate and ready to move this project forward into bidding. And lastly, just an overview of schedule. Of course, we're in February, asking for your permission and council's authorization to move forward with bidding here in the coming weeks so that construction can begin in approximately May and may take about a year to complete. That actual construction duration will be determined by the selected contractor. We have asked in our construction documents for the parking lot to be delivered as soon as possible. And for the locker room renovations to be completed early. So that will be one of the responsibilities of the contractor to get the parking lot and those existing locker room, get that work done quickly so that those can be used by the patrons while the balance of the construction on the west side of the building is being completed. So I certainly welcome any questions that you have, but that's a quick overview on where we've been and where we are headed.
Questions?
Ryan,
for
I
Ryan?
have a question.
Certainly.
With this expansion, does this now landlock this center?
Well, we have acquired the land that we need for this expansion. There is additional land that is by the church to the west. So it is technically feasible to do a further expansion, but not with the land that has currently been acquired. I would also mention that we have squeezed this project in between the existing building and an open drainage culvert that feeds most of the church property to their detention area in the northwest corner of the church property. It is feasible to box that culvert to pave over it, for example. It would be difficult to build over it, but there would be meaningful expense in boxing a good deal of that culvert. So it's technically feasible to expand, but again, with it, additional land would have to be acquired.
Ryan,
Yes, sir.
operationally, how does the facility operate while the existing locker rooms are under construction?
We've had some preliminary conversations with Claire and her team. The membership has been, of course, they're aware that this project is coming. They're obviously aware that they need more locker room space. So they're prepared to make those accommodations. There's presently some single user restrooms that are close in that area, including a single user area with a shower. So there's going to have to be some coordination between the selected contractor and Claire and her team to schedule that work. It's not feasible to take one of the locker rooms out of service and leave the other one in service because of the way the showers are arranged back to back. That work has to occur, but they're prepared to shut the pool down for a couple of weeks if necessary to get those showers and those areas rebuilt and reopened. So they're going to minimize the downtime, but using some of those other restroom facilities and closing the pool for small windows is certainly anticipated by Claire and her team.
Okay. And then on the alternates, is there any priority or recommendation on which of those you would choose first if we had available money?
Certainly, the alternate numbering system does not reflect any specific priority. Some of these are more advantageous earlier in the process and some are later. So for example, the furniture, we could make a fairly late determination that yes, we have money available for furniture. We could be well along in the construction process. But for example, the gym storage room, because that's physical construction, we really would want to know that early on. So the operator in the MAPS office will make the determination on the priority of those alternates. But the timing of when they're selected has a lot to do with where we are in the process. So for example, as I mentioned, gym storage would be a great one to be able to take on bid day because it would not slow the construction process down to incorporate that. And furniture could be added after the project was, 6 or 8 months under construction because it would have no impact upon our construction schedule, if that answers your question.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you.
Hey, Ryan, this is Bob Nealon. Just one question on that alternate 2 gym storage.
Yes.
If there were money available for that, is that actually construction of a slightly larger area, small room, or are we just talking about finishing out the existing space?
No, that is some additional square footage. There is a small gym storage room in the base bid that is modest. This is a second space on the north end of that pickleball gym that would be additive construction that would give them much more storage. As you can imagine, it's one of the things we hear from just about everybody we work with on a building, and Claire certainly adds it, that we cannot provide too much storage. So this would enhance their storage capabilities, but it is new additional square footage.
Okay, thank you.
I have another question, and this might be one more for David Todd to answer. The ad alternates that I see here remind me somewhat of a scenario that happened after, I believe, Wellness Center number 1 was open and operational, and our operator came before us requesting additional funds for that center because they were short having enough equipment to operate a lot of the centers, that they were short on furniture. It seemed to me that there was a noise issue and some panels had to be added in areas. And I just wondered if that could be another scenario here.
Well, certainly that could be if the operator comes back later. But what we've done is provided a project that we think is complete. And then these are some things that would be good to have, but we don't feel like we can afford them right now. The operator asked us to price some furniture in there. Quite frankly, the operator might even try to fund that themselves. So this is real common with what we do on these projects, is provide a few extra things, knowing that, the architect is going to be conservative with his estimate just to make sure that he's not over budget. So there's often times where we have an opportunity to squeeze a little here and there. Does that answer your question?
It does. And certainly having heard you said that the operator has looked at all of this, I would think that the operator, being as intimate with the operations of this facility, would have said these are musts and given an order. So thank you for the clarification.
David, do we have a recommendation from the subcommittee?
Yes, sir.
And that is that we approve it?
I'm sorry. Yes, sir. It does come from the subcommittee that approve it.
I move for approval.
Kimberly has moved that we approve this item, and it's been seconded by Bob Nayland. Is there further discussion? Cast your vote. The item has been approved. Thank you. That brings us to item, let's see, that brings us to item D, David.
Yes, sir. Item D is recommend approval of change order number 1, project M3-H003C, MAPS 3 Senior Health and Wellness Center 2, locker room expansion, 4021 South Walker Avenue, increase of $5,335. So as I said, this is a change order request for Wellness Center 2. If you remember, we're doing the locker room expansion on that project also. So there's 2 items in this change order. There's a partial building pad removal and suitable structural fill. So as they got out there, the soil that was up against the building and in that area where we're building a new pad was not suitable. So it was pulled out, and we need to put some new structural fill in there. So it's an engineered fill that has less of an expansion coefficient on it. And that was for $9,000. And then there was a building permit cost that was included in the project. So we asked the contractor to allow $5,000 for the permit, and it came back that the actual cost of the permit was only $1,298. So there's a $3,702 credit. And that gives us a balance of $5,335 on the change order. And this comes with the approval from the subcommittee.
Questions? It has been moved by Zane Boatwright that we approve it, seconded by Kimberly Lowe. Further discussion? Cast your vote. The item is approved. That brings us to item E, David.
Item E is recommend approval of change order number 1 and amendment number 1, project M3-T005, MAPS 3 West River Trail realignment, vicinity of West I-40 Service Road and Melvin Young Boulevard, a decrease of $5,735. So there were some things out there that we ran into that we needed to change, and that was the height of some chain link fencing out there. So there's $36,000 of new fencing, but there's also a credit of $42,625 for fencing that we're not going to use. So that gives us a balance of a decrease of $5,735. And this comes with the recommendation from the subcommittee.
Shall we approve it? Zane Boatright has moved, we approve it. It's been seconded by D. Morales. Further discussion? Cast your vote. It passed. Thank you. Item F, David.
Item F is recommend approval of change order number 4, project M3-R008, MAPS 3 Whitewater Facility, second floor renovation, 800 Riversport Drive, increase of $49,207.80 in Ward 7. There's several items on this change order. Remember, this is for the second floor renovations that we're doing at Riversport and then some other work around the site. The main item on this change order is item 2, which is the ski machine infrastructure. So this comes to us as a request from the operator. So they are able to get a ski simulation machine, snow skiing. They're going to put it inside the Riversport Rapids building in there in the cafe area. And in order to get that operational, they need to get plumbing, electrical, and mechanical drain into that area. It makes sense to have this contractor do that work and not have somebody else out there working. Staff worked with contractor to get this price. So that's the main item. The item 1 is some door and column covers, just some aesthetic kind of things that were asked. Item 3 is an HVA modification because the wall went all the way to the roof deck. They needed to make some penetrations in there for the air to flow through. And then as we got outside and we're doing some work around the structural grid on these panels around the outside, the operator asked that we leave some of that a little more open, and then that led to some handrail issues also. So there's an $8,500 credit for metal panels, and there's an almost $11,797 credit for handrail lighting. So they changed the style. It's still going to be lit. It'll still look very similar, but they changed it as far as the system. So when you add all that up, it ends up being $49,207. This was discussed at River Subcommittee, but they did not have a quorum, but they asked us to forward this on to you for approval.
Questions? Michael Adams has moved, we approve it. It's been seconded by D. Morales. Is there further discussion? Cast your ballot. The item has been approved. Thank you. That brings us to item G, David.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Item G is recommend approval of change order number 1 and amendment number 1, projects M3-P016 WC-1000 SC1073 Maps 3 Lower Scissortail Park, generally bounded by Interstate 40, South Robinson Avenue, Southwest 15th, and South Harvey, and 10th Street and South Walker, an increase of $26,542.34. So this is a change order to deal with security camera relocation that is for the Skydance Bridge that needs to be relocated in order to complete the work that they had over there. And it's relocate the camera to a new dedicated pole with footings. And then I'm sure you all remember the footings issue that we had in the upper park at the post office, the old post office building, where we had some similar, but not quite to the extent that we had in the upper park. But the lower park had some footings that were found from some buildings that were taken out long before we got there, and we anticipated that. So these are done as part of the amendment. So the prices were already set when the bid was submitted, and we're just basically allowing quantities to take out those. So there's $14,400 in footings to be removed. So the total is $26,542. Similarly, the subcommittee got together, did not have a quorum, but asked us to send this on to this group for approval.
It has been moved by Kimberly Lowe that we approve this. It's been seconded by Cecilia Robinson Woods. Is there further discussion? Cast your vote. It's been approved. Thank you. David, that brings us to item H, the sidewalk report.
All right, item H is an item that you requested, Mr. Chairman, last month, that we provide a report on sidewalk status and what we've been able to do. So Jason Cotton with ADG is here to give you a short presentation on the status and accomplishments of the sidewalk. So I'd like to turn it over to Jason.
Thank you.
Thank you, David. Good morning, board members. Thank you for giving us an opportunity to come forward and present to you this morning. As David said, this presentation was requested at the board meeting last month, and so we have brought with us just a really quick presentation to kind of give you some summary information about the sidewalk work that's been completed in conjunction with the MAP 3 program. Next slide, please. So this slide may look a little bit familiar to you. As we were kind of contemplating the fifth phase of sidewalk improvements, we pulled together some summary information, and so you see a lot of the summary data for each one of the phases. We've included the mileage here that was completed with each one of the phases, as well as some budget and obligation information from your budget and obligations report. I will say that the information that's presented here is per the December board meeting, and so the budgets and obligation numbers that you see in your reports here this morning might be slightly different, but for the most part, these are coincide with what you see in your packet this morning. So you can see the first four phases there. Next slide, please. Phase 5 is actually not yet started. Staff is actually in the process of negotiating a design contract for that work, and so about 2.9 miles worth of sidewalks will be constructed with that fifth phase. Anticipated budget of $1 million. Next slide, please. So we have brought with us just basically a graphical depiction of the information that was on the previous two slides. And so essentially the first four phases of work are complete, and you see them highlighted in green here on this map. The fifth phase, we are calling that as in process. And so you can see we've got some improvements in South Oklahoma City as well as North Oklahoma City. And so won't be long before those are completed as well. Next slide, please. And so just some summary information on all five phases. Essentially about 53.5 miles worth of sidewalks is where we'll end up. Total budget of about $18.2 million, $16.9 million have been obligated. And so with that last project, we'll have obviously another $1 million that will be obligated eventually. And so doing some simple math. Next slide, please. You can see we've been able to execute the sidewalk project for essentially about $340,000 a mile. And so I know that there's been a lot of conversation through the years about how much sidewalks have been completed in conjunction with the MAPS 3 program, but I will tell you we spent some time, and while we fell somewhat short in what was initially anticipated, we have gone back and looked at some of the other programs that have been executed by the city in terms of constructing sidewalks. It does seem like our unit price, the cost of the sidewalks on a per mile basis are somewhat better than maybe some of the other programs. So for some of the other programs, we see costs in the range of $400,000 to $500,000 a mile. And so while we didn't quite hit the initial target that we wanted, it does seem that we've been able to use the funds very efficiently and build just as much sidewalks as feasible. So next slide, please. I think that's really about it this morning. We'd be pleased to answer any questions that the board might have for us.
Jason, I have a question. One of the first things we did was to develop a long-term strategic plan. And then we were going to fulfill that as much as we could with the money we had. And I feel great about what has been done. How are we doing on that long-term strategic plan? Are we 25% of where we wanted to go, or 60%, or how do you sense where we are under that plan?
Jason, could I help you with that?
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead, David.
Mr. Chairman, we did put together that plan, but that plan has evolved over the last 7 years or so. And with the introduction of Better Streets, Safer City and additional money for sidewalks, they took it on to a new level. And so our original sidewalks were for just arterial streets. That's what Maps 3 was dedicated to. Better Streets, Safer City took it into neighborhoods, along with the bond issue, took it into neighborhoods. So they kind of put all that together. So I can't tell you at this point exactly how far we went in that list, but I think the list is somewhat of an infinite list because there are so many needs in the city. But I believe that we made a very big dent in what we were trying to do. And Better Streets, Safer City has been able to continue and do an additional 90 miles, right in that number, on top of the 53 that Jason was showing.
That's great news, David. Thank you. I appreciate that explanation. Other questions?
And David, doesn't Maps 4 have money for sidewalks as well?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
More sidewalks, trails, and bike lanes.
David, in the original Maps 3 program design, what the citizens voted on, wasn't 50 miles our target?
There was no specific target in the resolution. There was some targets in the resolution, not in the some of the campaign literature that was sent out, but I don't believe you're taxing my memory, Mr. Adams. I'm having to remember. I've been so involved with the Maps 4 resolution, I can't remember what the Maps 3 said, but
I know it wasn't in the resolution, but I was thinking early on, we discussed that 50 miles had been talked about, and the council gave us some extra money and some other things to try to get to that number, I thought.
The number that was thrown around was 70 that we were trying to reach, but not knowing that there were so many things like retaining walls and bridges and culverts we had to build. It wasn't just a matter of just building sidewalks, which caused us to come up a little short. That and the width, if you recall, sidewalks are between 5 and 6 feet. And that original estimate was based on 4. So I think we've done a really good job of getting as far as we can on it. And then, as I said, with the additional funds, we've exceeded that.
Yeah, sounds good. Thank you.
Michael, if you remember when very early in the program, we were looking at the sidewalk plan for Oklahoma City, and we thought we'd be lucky to get 50 miles because of what David was talking about with driveways and retaining walls and width and going around obstacles and stuff. And I believe, based on what David just said, we've gone way beyond the original 50-mile goal that we set the first year of Maps 3.
Okay, other comments? Really appreciate this report. We're in a situation now as we head into 10 years, kind of looking back and making sure we did what we hoped we could do. And I feel great about this, David. Thank you very much. Okay, that brings us to item number Roman numeral 4. Is there any new business to be brought before the board? Hearing none, let's move to item 5. Any subcommittee reports? David, are you going to include in your report about the ribbon cutting for the convention center?
I can, unless you'd like. I think, Mr. Chairman, that's a privilege you ought to have.
Well, I think it's a privilege we all ought to have. It's set for 4 p.m. on March the 11th, which is a Thursday. And there will be, it will be by invitation only, as I understand it, keeping with the city's protocols. So just encourage everyone who wants to be there. I know that you're hearing from Christy Yeager and others. I hope that all of you were included when we heard from our colleague Sue, who is now languishing in the sun in Naples, Florida, wishing us well. So she was invited, will not be able to attend, but anyway, just hope the rest of you can, and it will be every project in this NMAP3 has been important. This one happens to be by in terms of dollars spent, the largest one in the city's history. So it's I think we're reaching a kind of a benchmark event, and I hope that all of you can attend. You want to add anything to that, David?
The only thing I'd like to add is that there is a public tour on the 13th, which is Saturday. You have to sign up for slots in order to keep the numbers at an acceptable rate, and it's a privately personal guided tour. You get to walk through the building. So I'd encourage everybody to look on social media to sign up for those tours.
Okay. Any other?
Mr. Chairman, this is Zane.
Yes.
Just a question to ask you. And I saw this in the email and it said by invitation only. Does that mean just MAPS advisory board and subcommittee members, no spouses and no guests, correct?
I don't know the answer to that, and I wondered myself. I was going to ask someone in the mayor's office to call Brenda and tell her she couldn't come. So, but I don't know. I do not know the answer to that. I just assumed that we're all invited, but I don't know who else is on the list. Do you, David? Are you making up that list?
I'm working with our public information office. Let me get that clarified, and I'll send everybody some information on that.
Okay, great, David. I'll give Brenda your name.
Yes,
David.
please do.
I'm
I'll take the heat off of you.
Smart man.
okay.
Since I still have the hot mic, Mr. Chairman, let me get a little update on the Trails and Sidewalk Subcommittee meeting that we had yesterday.
Yes.
One thing we didn't get to present to you was a plan on what we were going to do with some of the money that we still have left over to increase some of the trail connections. What we did is decided to hold that up until a month, David, or next month, because we asked David to go take a look at an additional trail that we had talked about very, very early in MAPS 3. But we have a plan on how to spend the rest of that money that goes out and makes connections between a number of the different trails. David, do you want to go into any more detail or just wait until next month?
I'd rather wait till next month.
I understand. I was disappointed that they wanted to wait, but I know that Russell had a question that he kind of tagged you with. So, but we do have a plan on what to do with the remaining funds that we have in the trails budget. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any other subcommittees? All right, then that brings us to item Roman numeral 6. David, your report.
I'll give you a quick status update on several things. And you mentioned the convention center ribbon cutting, real close to having that punch list completed. Flintco's done a great job working through all the storms and the pandemic and everything else that we've had there. Obviously, they were having events there, had a fairly sizable event there yesterday. Another exciting thing, if you haven't driven by there, and I encourage you to try and drive on Robinson now that it's open. You saw from that presentation that the structures on 4th Street, or I should say on Mick Cornett Drive now, are up, being painted and still being worked on. But I'm really excited with how that corridor is going to look and what we will provide as far as a place between the Omni and the convention center. Fairgrounds, don't forget that MAPS 3 provided some money for the MAPS 4 Coliseum. That work is ongoing. Just don't have anything really to share or talk about right now. We talked about briefly the work at the river, and that's ongoing. Trails, West River Trail continues with its repairs out there, construction, and as Mr. Boatwright just mentioned, we're still talking about some additional trails. We talked about wellness centers today. Wellness Center 3 has begun, or they've been given a work order for construction. The weather has slowed them down a little bit right out of the gate, but that is underway, and design is getting close to wrapping up on Wellness Center 4. And then the lower park is under construction. Obviously, with the weather that we had, it slowed them down, but that continues to progress in that area. That's all I have.
Questions for David? All right, that brings us to items Roman numeral 7. Any comments by members of the board?
Mr. Chairman, just a quick question for David and a comment. David, the tours of the convention center, I've already signed up for one. Once we're in the building, is there a limit on how long we can be there? I think there are 15-minute time slots for signing up, but is there any limit on how long people can stay?
I don't think so, Mr. Nealon, but I believe the goal is to have people flow through there and not stop and be visiting, but just to have a nice, steady, self-guided tour through a designated path to see various parts and then on out the building. So if you walk a little slow, I don't think anybody's going to come arrest you.
Okay, thanks. And the comment I had, Freddie and I took our 5 and 3-year-old granddaughters to Scissortail Park a couple of weeks ago, just a few days before the cold weather hit. They had a fabulous time. That is such a phenomenal facility. They just, roamed all over the place, climbed over everything they could find. And it's a spectacular place for kids to go. When we got there, it was early afternoon, and there were people in the park, but it wasn't terribly crowded. By the time we left late afternoon, the place was packed. There were people all over the place. It's phenomenal how many people come down and use Scissortail Park. And since I'm working remotely from home and I'm not downtown a lot, I don't get an opportunity really to observe it firsthand. But that one day became very crowded, and it's just exciting to see all of the activity in the park, and our granddaughter certainly enjoyed it. It's a marvelous facility. We can be very proud of it.
That's great.
Thank you, Bob.
David.
Yes, sir.
I think on the budget report you gave us, we raised 835 million or so compared to the as I recall, 777 originally anticipated. And I think because of that excess money, we've been able to do a lot of things that, were not anticipated originally. And I wondered maybe one of the meetings you might kind of recap some of the things we've been able to do. I know we've given money, as you mentioned, to the fairgrounds for the arena, and I think there's money given for the Union Station and the parking garage and some other things, as well as maybe some of the expansions or projects that we were able to do in some of the different subcommittees. And I think it'd be nice just to have a record of some of the extra things that we've been able to accomplish and how some of that excess money has been allocated.
Okay, we can do that.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
I had one comment, if I might.
Yes.
Just reminding everyone that, as Bob had said, Scissortail Park is open. And now that we've seen a few days of some really nice weather, maybe spring fever starting to hit, just reminding everybody that it's a great time to volunteer at the park. You can sign up to do that. There are wonderful membership packages. If you're antsy to get out and have some great food, there's food trucks always on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And mark your calendar for May 2nd for Cinco de Mayo celebrations. Go to scissortailpark.org, see the calendar, see what's going on, and get out and breathe some fresh air.
Great, Kim. Anyone else? All right. Any staff member have comments they want to offer?
No, sir.
Or have we had any citizens sign up for comments? So no one has asked to be heard from the public. So that brings us to item 8, adjournment. Anything to be considered before we adjourn? We're adjourned. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.